The wind tore across the plains with a fury that seemed almost alive, rattling the skeletal branches of the cottonwoods and whipping the dust into long, choking waves. Lightning split the darkening sky, illuminating the barren horizon in brief, blinding flashes. From nowhere, she appeared a lone figure, standing straight against the storm's wrath, her cloak plastered to her frame and her eyes sharp as flint. Every instinct in him screamed caution, but the Apache who watched from the edge of the ridge could not look away. There was a weight to her presence, something fierce and unyielding that made the hair on his arms rise. He had lived his life on these plains, tracking storms, hunting game, and navigating the fragile treaties of survival that bound his people. Nothing had ever unsettled him like this. Her steps carried her closer through the mud and the howling wind, each one deliberate, as if she were walking not just through the storm, but through some invisible barrier that separated her from the ordinary world. The thunder rolled again, shaking the ground, but still she came, unfazed, until the wind threw her cloak wide and revealed the fire in her gaze. She stopped, and the world seemed to hold its breath. For a moment, the only sound was the beating of his own heart and the distant roar of the storm. Then she spoke, her voice cutting through the chaos with the precision of an arrow. "I know what you were planning," she said, and the Apache felt his chest tighten. Her words were simple, yet loaded with a knowledge that no one should possess. Every line of his face hardened, every muscle tensed. Who was she to stand there in the heart of a tempest and claim such awareness? Lightning illuminated her face, and he caught the first true glimpse of her features' sharp cheekbones, eyes dark as midnight but burning with an intensity he had never seen. Her hair whipped around her like living smoke, and her stance, even battered by the wind, was unyielding. He had faced enemies, strangers, and wild beasts, but never a person who radiated both threat and command so completely. The storm was her companion, not her obstacle, and that alone unsettled him more than any duel or ambush ever had. The Apache moved closer, boots sinking into the wet soil, his instincts torn between defense and curiosity. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice low but firm, carrying over the roar of the storm. She smiled faintly, a shadow of mystery, as if she had been expecting him all along. "Names are for those who wish to be tamed," she said. And the words struck him like cold iron. There was a power in her that was unclaimed, raw, and he realized that whatever game had brought her here, it was not one to be measured by ordinary rules. He studied her. Every scar on his own body told a story of battles survived, yet in her presence they felt insignificant. She held a small bundle in her hands, wrapped in a cloth that flapped violently in the wind, and he knew instinctively that whatever it contained was dangerous, or precious, or both. The storm seemed to bend around her, not against her, and that knowledge unsettled him deeper than the chill that ran along his spine. "You shouldn't have come," he said finally, though his voice betrayed the curiosity he fought to suppress. Her eyes flickered with amusement. "Perhaps," she said, "but I had no choice." There was a weight to her words, a promise of events to come that made him uneasy. He could sense a history she carried, one that had not yet been revealed, but whose shadows already stretched across the plains like the storm clouds above. The Apache remembered the stories told in whispers among his people of strangers who appeared without warning, of travelers who carried secrets that could shift power and fate alike. But none had prepared him for the force of a single human standing alone against a storm, and speaking with authority that seemed beyond explanation. He wanted to ask more, to unravel the mystery, but the wind tore words from his lips before he could form them. For a long moment, they simply faced each other, two figures framed by chaos, neither willing to retreat. His mind raced through scenarios, each more improbable than the last. Why here? Why now? And most unnerving of all, how could she know what no one else should know? His people taught him to trust the signs of the land, to read the tracks of animals, the whispers of the wind, the language of the fire, but she did not follow any of these patterns. She seemed to storm in human form, both familiar and utterly alien. Lightning struck closer, illuminating the barren ridge in stark white light. He flinched, and in that moment, she moved not aggressively, but with the confidence of someone who knew exactly how the next moment would unfold. "Do you understand what is coming?" she asked, her voice steady, commanding, impossible to ignore. He did not answer immediately, for answering would require admitting uncertainty, and he had never done that lightly. A rumble of thunder rolled through the valley, shaking loose stones and leaves alike, and he saw in her eyes a spark of defiance, of challenge. It was as if the storm itself had chosen her as its herald, and he, for the first time, felt the weight of being outmatched, not by strength, but by presence. He had lived among warriors, leaders, and hunters, but none had moved him like this. She was a force, a question, and an enigma rolled into one. And the more he tried to pin her down, the further her truth seemed to recede. Finally he spoke, his voice rough with caution. "Tell me why you are here," he demanded, and the wind carried his words into the empty plains. Her gaze met his unflinchingly. "Because if I do not," she said, and then the lightning struck again, blinding him for a heartbeat. When his vision cleared, she was closer than before, the bundle in her hands now pressing against her chest like a talisman. Her words hung in the air, unfinished, dangerous, and filled with a promise he could neither ignore nor decipher. The Apache stepped back, instinct telling him to hold his ground, yet knowing that whatever awaited was beyond the reach of his usual strategies. The storm raged on, and in its fury, he saw the first glimpse of a choice that would define everything to come. She was not simply a traveler, not merely a messenger of fate. She was a force that would change the course of lives on these plains, including his own. And yet, he still did not know if she was friend or threat, savior or destroyer. The wind howled, and the first fat drops of rain fell, mingling with the dust and dirt. He could sense the tension stretching taut between them, ready to snap. Her eyes locked with his, holding a secret, a warning, a challenge that would echo far beyond this storm. Then she spoke again, softer this time, but no less powerful. "Do not follow me, unless you are ready to face the truth." And in that instant, the Apache knew that nothing would ever be the same. The storm swallowed her next movements, leaving only the echo of her words. The swirl of dust and the distant rumble of thunder that seemed to carry a warning. He stood frozen, heart pounding, aware that a single decision, one step forward or back, would shape the path of everything yet to come. Once as the wind tore across the plains, scattering clouds and secrets alike. The Apache understood that the real storm had only just begun. The Apache watched as the figure disappeared into the storm, swallowed by rain and wind, as if she had been nothing more than a shadow conjured by the tempest itself. He remained frozen on the ridge, boots sinking into the wet soil, his mind spinning with questions that had no easy answers. Every instinct in him screamed that this woman, this force of nature, was no ordinary traveler. There was a story behind those eyes, a history forged in danger and survival, yet hidden beneath layers of purpose and secrecy. He remembered his own beginnings, wandering these plains as a boy under the guidance of his father, a man of fierce honor and careful strategy. The Apache had learned early that the land demanded respect, that survival meant reading the smallest of signs of bent branch, a footprint in the dirt, a whisper of the wind. But none of those lessons could have prepared him for the presence of someone who seemed to bend the storm itself to her will. Hours passed as the rain eased into a steady drizzle, leaving the plains damp and reflective under a gray, shifting sky. He returned to the edge of the ridge, scanning for tracks, for any sign of her passage. The earth was torn by the storm, yet there were faint footprints, careful and deliberate, leading toward the narrow canyon where shadows clung to jagged rocks. He traced them, careful to move quietly, sensing that each step might either reveal or conceal truths he was not ready to confront. The canyon had long been a place of legend among his people. Stories told of travelers who vanished, of whispers carried by the wind that spoke of hidden danger and unexpected fortune. Some called it a cursed place, others a sacred path that tested courage and resolve. The Apache knew those tales well, yet they had always been abstract, warnings to keep young men from wandering too far. Now, following her footprints, he realized the legends were alive. She had walked this path before, or perhaps chosen it, knowing what awaited at its end. As he moved deeper into the canyon, he glimpsed signs of past habitation-charred stones, where fires had once burned. Carvings on the rocks that told of people long gone, their stories half-erased by wind and rain, was a place of memory, of history etched into the land itself, and he felt a strange kinship with it. Like the canyon, she carried marks of survival, of battles fought quietly and decisively. He wondered what had brought her to this harsh expanse, alone and unyielding, and what she carried in that bundle pressed to her chest. The Apache's thoughts drifted briefly to his own past encounters. He had faced rival tribes, bounty hunters, and wild predators, each demanding his attention and his skill. Yet in none of those confrontations had he ever felt the weight of uncertainty pressing so heavily. With her, every sense was heightened, every movement analyzed, and every silence filled with the promise of revelation or peril. He realized that she was testing him, even from a distance, drawing him into a puzzle he was only beginning to understand. Night approached, bringing with it the sharp chill of the desert air. He set up a small fire, using damp kindling with care, and kept watch over the canyon's shadowed depths. Sleep was impossible. The memory of her eyes and her words lingered like embers that refused to die. Who was she to speak of knowledge no one should possess, who had taught her to read people, to anticipate moves and reactions with such precision? And most pressing of all, what did she intend to do with the storm she had walked through so fearlessly? The Apache's mind returned to the bundle. He had caught only fleeting glimpses of it. But there was something about the way she held it that demanded attention, that suggested it carried more than mere belongings. Perhaps it was a message, a token, or even something dangerous. The thought sent a shiver through him, for he had learned that in these plains, objects could hold as much power as people if wielded with knowledge. And she wielded it, whether he understood it or not. Memories of his father's teachings drifted through his mind. The land tells stories, his father had said, but not all of them are safe to hear. He had grown strong on these lessons, careful and measured, yet never had he considered that a human could embody the same mystery as the land itself. He realized that she moved not with fear, but with purpose, as though every step had been planned, every risk calculated. The storm had been her ally, not her adversary, and that revelation unsettled him more than any battle could. He decided to follow the trail at first light, moving cautiously through the canyon's narrow passages. The canyon walls rose like sentinels, dark and imposing, and he felt the weight of history pressing on all sides. The tracks grew fainter, as if she knew he would come, leaving just enough to draw him forward while hiding the full truth. Each turn revealed remnants of past travelers' discarded tools, bones weathered to white, symbols carved into stone. The Apache studied each sign, interpreting meaning where others would see only chaos. He knew that to follow her was to walk a path that tested both courage and judgment, yet he could not resist. The wind whispered through the rocks, carrying faint echoes that might have been her voice, or merely the canyon playing tricks on the ears. He paused often, listening, waiting, imagining what she might be thinking, where her journey would lead. He understood that she carried secrets, but he did not yet understand the weight or danger of those secrets. Each step forward brought a deeper sense of anticipation and dread, as though the land itself conspired to reveal truth slowly, painfully, and with purpose. As the sun rose, turning the canyon walls golden, the Apache found evidence of her recent passage. A broken branch here, a smudge of clay there. It was subtle, but to him it spoke volumes. She was not reckless, she was deliberate. Every movement was calculated to mislead, to test, or perhaps to prepare him for what lay ahead. It felt the stirrings of respect mingled with unease. Whoever she was, she had mastered the plains in a way few could, commanding the storm, the land, and the people who might cross her path. The Apache recalled the elders' stories of those who came bearing both power and burden. Such people were rare, and their presence marked the turning of events in ways both visible and hidden. He wondered if she was one of them, or if she had become something entirely different, a force unbound by ordinary rules, shaping her own destiny on a land that demanded obedience. The questions weighed on him as heavily as his own memories, yet he felt compelled to follow, to uncover the story behind the storm-walking stranger. Hours of tracking passed, the canyon narrowing into a labyrinth of rock and shadow. Occasionally he glimpsed signs of a camp, fresh footprints, a smoldering fire long extinguished, or a scrap of cloth caught on a jagged edge. Each clue added to the tension, revealing her cunning, her resourcefulness, and her unyielding determination. The Apache could not help but feel that this was a journey not just of discovery, but of confrontation, of facing a person whose intentions were as unpredictable as the storm she had walked through. By evening, he reached a hidden plateau, high above the canyon floor. From here, the plains stretched endlessly, rivers and mesas glittering faintly in the waning light. He paused, scanning the horizon, but there was no sign of her. Still, he felt her presence, as if the land itself remembered her passing. The bundle, the words, the storm, they all coalesced into a single thought. She was a herald, a mystery meant to shift everything he knew about the world and himself. And somewhere, just beyond sight, she waited, leading him into a story that would test every skill, every instinct, every ounce of courage he possessed. Night fell again, colder this time, and the Apache built a small fire to watch and wait. His eyes traced the shadows of the plateau, and in every flicker of flame he imagined her face, her stance, her eyes burning with knowledge. Sleep would not come easily, for the storm had passed. But the tension it carried lingered in every gust of wind, every rustle of leaves, every distant cry of an unseen animal. He knew that the path forward would not be easy, that every choice carried consequences both immediate and hidden. As he settled for the night, he thought of the plains, of the storm, and of the woman who had appeared unbidden, shaping the world around her with the simplest of words and the quietest of gestures. He realized that the mystery was only beginning, that the story she carried and the bundle she protected would demand every ounce of his skill and every shred of his courage. And somewhere in the darkness, he knew she watched, calculating the next move, waiting for him to step further into the storm that she had conjured. The Apache remained on the plateau long after night had fully claimed the canyon. The fire reduced to glowing embers, the wind whispering through the rocks like voices from another time. His mind churned with the questions the woman had planted, who she was, why she appeared in the middle of a storm, and what power or purpose that bundle she carried held. Every instinct told him that following her blindly could be fatal, yet the mystery gnawed at him with relentless insistence. It was not merely curiosity, it was a force pulling him into a story he could not ignore. As the first light of dawn brushed the canyon walls, he traced the faintest impressions of movement along the cliffs, small disturbances in the dirt that suggested she had passed this way not long before. He recognized a rhythm in her steps, the kind that belonged to someone who knew exactly where she was going and why. The Apache paused, adjusting the strap of his bow across his shoulder, and listened. Far below, the river whispered over stones, carrying echoes of a world he had long known, yet it felt distant now, like a life he had left behind. From another direction, the canyon offered signs of other travelers, shadows that moved silently between jagged rocks. The Apache squinted, discerning faint movements that suggested he was not the only one interested in this woman. Perhaps there were others, hunters, thieves, or rival warriors drawn by rumors, by greed, or by fear of the unknown. The possibility unsettled him. If she was already pursued, then every step he took to follow her would be fraught with risk, yet he could not turn back. Some part of him knew that to retreat would be to abandon a destiny he had not fully understood, but which was now pressing against him like the storm itself had pressed against her the night before. As he moved cautiously down the canyon floor, the Apache thought of his own tribe, of the elders and warriors who had trained him. He remembered the tales of hidden fortunes, secret alliances, and betrayals that had shaped his people's history. These plains were no stranger to conflict. Yet he sensed that what he was following now was not merely a struggle for power or survival, it was something larger, confrontation between human cunning and fate itself. Each footfall brought him closer, but also deeper into uncertainty, where one misstep could trigger events he was unprepared to face. Meanwhile, the woman had paused in a sheltered cleft. Her cloak still wet from the rain, the bundle held tightly to her chest. Her dark eyes scanned the canyon below, alert to every movement, every whisper of the wind. She had not come alone to this place in spirit. She carried memories of distant lands, of faces long gone, and of warnings etched into her mind by people who had vanished before her eyes. The Apache was not the first to follow her, nor would he be the last, but she had learned the art of misdirection and survival long ago. Each step she took had been calculated, yet the weight of the secret she bore pressed on her shoulders like the storm pressing against the plains. The bundle contained more than the mundane. It held symbols of power, fragments of a past that could unsettle lives, and knowledge that could reshape loyalties. Its presence created an invisible tension, not just for the Apache, but for anyone who understood what it might signify. She sensed the shift in the canyon, the presence of another, and moved silently. using shadows to her advantage, aware that discovery could mean danger or opportunity. Every movement was a negotiation with the land, a conversation with the storm's memory, a dance with forces unseen but deeply felt. As the Apache tracked her through narrow passages and around jagged outcrops, he thought about his own motivations. He had always lived by skill, honor, and instinct, yet something about her drew him into uncertainty. Could he trust her words? Could he understand her intentions? The canyon seemed to test him at every turn, each twist and turn a mirror to the unknown path she had chosen. And in that mirror, he saw more than himself. He saw questions of morality, power, and destiny reflected in the storm she had conjured before him. Elsewhere, in a distant ridge overlooking the canyon, figures watched both of them, cloaked in silence. They spoke in murmurs, their voices carrying over the wind only faintly, but they were deliberate, calculating. A man named Cade had been tracking rumors of a traveler with unusual skill, someone who moved like a shadow yet carried weight beyond measure. Alongside him was Leora, a woman whose cunning matched his own, who had followed whispered tales of a bundle that could disrupt alliances and challenge authority. Neither knew the full story, yet both understood the risk. The Apache was unwittingly walking into a web that extended beyond the canyon, beyond the storm, into a game of power and revelation that none could afford to ignore. Back in the canyon, the Apache found signs that she had paused once more, perhaps to consider the path forward, or to listen for the same unseen observers, he now imagined. Rocks had been shifted, a small fire pit freshly disturbed, suggesting someone had been there recently, perhaps not by accident. He crouched low, scanning for tracks or clues, aware that every move he made could alter the unfolding story. The canyon was alive with possibility, each shadow and echo carrying meaning he had to interpret carefully. She had chosen her route for protection and symbolism. Weaving through the canyon in a pattern that echoed the history of these lands, ancient carvings told of people who had walked these same paths, leaving messages for those perceptive enough to find them. She read those signs as naturally as breathing, understanding the layers of meaning, the hidden warnings, and the guidance they offered. The Apache, following behind, began to sense the subtle language of the rocks, of footprints, of wind, yet he realized that she was always a step ahead, a force both mortal and enigmatic. The tension grew with every passing hour. The storm had left behind a landscape altered and unpredictable. Mudslides, fallen branches, and hidden water holes made every step dangerous. Yet these obstacles also served as a test, filtering the weak and unprepared from those capable of continuing the pursuit. The Apache pressed on, driven by a mix of curiosity, duty, and instinct, aware that each challenge could reveal or conceal the truths he sought. In one narrow gorge, he came across a small artifact half buried in mud, a carved piece of wood, its edges smoothed by time, symbols etched deeply into its surface. He paused, recognizing the craftsmanship of a culture long gone, yet familiar in technique and intent. She had passed by recently, and the artifact, placed deliberately or by accident, became a clue in a puzzle he could not yet solve. It hinted at alliances and histories, betrayals and loyalties, all layered beneath the immediate danger of the canyon and the storm she had brought. As night fell again, he made camp near a small spring hidden behind rocks. The Apache's mind refused rest. He replayed every word, every movement, every clue, building a mental map of possibilities. Who was she to speak with such knowledge of his intentions? What had she seen in the storm that night that gave her authority over him without a single act of violence? The questions multiplied, each demanding answers that were not forthcoming. He knew that to confront her directly might be premature, yet he felt the pull of inevitability growing stronger. Meanwhile, she watched from another ridge, hidden by darkness, aware of his pursuit, aware of the silent observers who had been drawn into the unfolding story. Mind weighed risk against necessity, secrecy against revelation, knowing that the Apache's persistence could either aid her or endanger everything she carried. Every movement, every calculated choice, was designed to maintain control over an unfolding narrative that stretched far beyond the canyon. At dawn, a coyote's cry echoed through the gorge, sharp and haunting. The sound reminded both hunter and pursued that the plains were alive, that every choice had consequences, and that the storm, though past, was only the beginning of a deeper force at work. The Apache tightened his grip on his bow, sensing the convergence of history's ambitions and unknown powers that had begun to shape the canyon into a theater of unfolding conflict. He did not know her name, yet he felt compelled to understand her story, to anticipate her moves, to follow her into the unknown. She, in turn, navigated the canyon with a mastery that suggested knowledge far beyond ordinary experience, aware that every step was shaping the paths of those around her. The tension between them, palpable and unyielding, defined the canyon now more than the wind, the river, or the rocks. The Apache caught sight of movement on the far cliff, a shadow that mirrored his own pursuit but hinted at others waiting unseen. The realization sharpened his senses. This was no longer a simple chase, but a complex web of intentions, secrets, and unseen players. Each shadow became a question mark, each sound a potential clue, and each pause a test of patience and skill. He understood that the conflict he faced was layered, both personal and universal. Rooted in history, survival, and the power of choice, the storm had revealed her once, and now the canyon revealed her methods. Every path he followed, every clue he uncovered, brought him closer to understanding, yet simultaneously deepened the mystery. The Apache realized that the woman was not merely leading him. She was orchestrating events, shaping outcomes, and challenging him to step beyond what he thought possible. And somewhere, hidden yet always present, the bundle she carried remained the key, its purpose known only to her. The night closed in again, and the Apache settled near the spring, aware that sleep would be elusive, that the canyon itself was alive with tension, and that tomorrow would demand choices that could alter the lives of all involved. He stared into the darkness, listening to the distant howl of a lone wolf, and felt the weight of destiny pressing on him. The storm was gone, but the conflict it had begun was far from resolved. Somewhere in the canyon, she waited, calculating, watching, and moving toward a truth that would test courage, loyalty, and resolve. The canyon had grown silent, as if the land itself were holding its breath. The Apache crouched low behind a jagged boulder, eyes fixed on a narrow pass below where shadows moved with careful deliberation. Every instinct screamed that she was near, that her presence carried weight beyond any ordinary traveler, and that the bundle she held would soon define the turning point of everything. His muscles tensed with anticipation, his senses sharpened by the knowledge that one misstep could unravel months of tracking or worse, invite disaster. She moved like a phantom, slipping between the shadows with calculated grace, her cloak catching on rocks yet never betraying her path. Every step seemed rehearsed, yet natural, as though the canyon itself had carved her movements into existence. The Apache studied her closely, noting the subtle ways she adjusted the weight of the bundle, the tilt of her head, the pause before every turn. She was preparing for something, and he could feel the tension coiling in the air like a living thing, a storm waiting to break once more. From another ridge, Cade and Leora observed silently, their eyes sharp and calculating. Cade's jaw tightened as he followed the faint movement of the two figures below. "She knows we're here," he muttered, his voice low, almost a whisper. Leora's eyes flicked to the Apache, recognizing him as both obstacle and potential ally. "And he knows her," she said. "The question is whether he can keep up." Their plans were intricate, yet they were only shadows of the full story, unaware of the power the woman wielded, or the hidden strength the Apache had yet to reveal. The woman paused near a cluster of boulders, her eyes scanning the canyon for signs of pursuit. She had expected him to follow, yet the precision of his tracking surprised her. His skill and patience spoke of years honed on these plains, and she felt a spark of respect that was not often granted to strangers. The bundle pressed to her chest was not just a collection of objects. It was the key to a past she could not ignore, and the catalyst for a future she was determined to shape. Every movement, every choice, was a negotiation between survival and revelation. The Apache crept closer, his bow ready, yet his mind was as alert as his body. He knew that confrontation was inevitable, that the moment when questions demanded answers was approaching. The canyon narrowed ahead, the walls rising like silent witnesses, and he sensed that whatever lay beyond would test courage, skill, and resolve. The wind shifted, carrying a scent of smoke, of wet earth, and of possibility. Every detail mattered now. The smallest clue could tip the balance between danger and discovery. She finally stopped at the edge of a high plateau overlooking the river below, the bundle illuminated by the faint glow of early morning light. For the first time, she allowed herself a pause, letting her eyes drift over the canyon floor, imagining the path of those who followed. The Apache had gained ground, but the gap remained, a fragile thread connecting pursuit and confrontation. Her breathing was steady, controlled. Yet there was a tension beneath the surface, a recognition that the storm within her had been mirrored by the storm outside, and that both were approaching a breaking point. The Apache moved with care, aware of unseen observers and the precarious nature of the terrain. He recognized the signs of a trapdoor, at least a test yet. His focus remained on her. Every instinct told him that the bundle, her words, and the mystery of her presence were intertwined. The canyon itself seemed to amplify the tension, the cliffs echoing distant sounds, turning small movements into potential signals of danger. He knew that the moment of reckoning was close, and that it would demand not only skill, but understanding, judgment, and courage. From the shadows, Cade adjusted his stance, signaling Leora to remain still. "They're closing in," he said, his voice barely above the whisper of the wind. Leora nodded, her eyes narrowing, calculating how to intervene without revealing their presence. Their motives were layered with greed and ambition, yet they were unprepared for the force. They were tracking a woman whose presence shaped the canyon, and a warrior whose determination refused to yield. Every choice they made now could accelerate the confrontation or send everything spiraling into chaos. The woman shifted slightly, sensing the presence of the Apache closer than before. She did not look directly at him, yet every movement betrayed awareness, a silent acknowledgement of pursuit. The bundle seemed to pulse with significance, as though it contained not just history, but power and warning. She had carried it across storms and through shadows, protecting it from those who would misuse it. And now the canyon held the stage for the inevitable reckoning. The Apache paused behind a boulder, observing her stance, interpreting the subtle signs of readiness in her posture. Every step she had taken had been deliberate, every pause calculated. He realized that the bundle was more than a collection of objects. It was a symbol, a story, and perhaps even a weapon in its own right. The weight of responsibility pressed on him, for to misjudge her, to act too soon or too late, could have consequences far beyond their immediate struggle. The canyon grew narrower, the walls looming closer, and the tension between them tightened like a drawn bowstring. The Apache felt the pulse of the land beneath his feet, the subtle vibrations of movement, and the faint echo of the storm that had introduced her to him. Each moment stretched, heavy with anticipation, as if the entire canyon waited for the confrontation to ignite. She spoke softly, her voice carrying over the still air. "You have come far." The Apache's eyes narrowed, recognizing the calm authority in her tone. "I had to," he replied, his voice steady, carrying both respect and challenge. "I need to understand." She did not answer immediately, letting silence speak between them. A silence filled with tension, questions, and unspoken truths. From a higher ridge, Cade shifted, signaling to Leora that the moment was approaching. They could intervene at any time, yet something in the canyon suggested that doing so would trigger consequences they could not predict. The woman's mastery of the terrain, her knowledge of the Apache, and the weight of the bundle created an unseen barrier, one that forced even skilled observers to hesitate. Their patience was tested as the story unfolded with deliberate suspense, each moment amplifying the stakes. The Apache took a careful step forward, eyes never leaving her. "The storm, the night you appeared. It wasn't natural," he said. His voice carried conviction, yet also curiosity, as he tried to decipher the truth behind her actions. She tilted her head slightly, a faint smile tracing her lips. "Nor was your arrival," she replied, a hint of amusement beneath the gravity of her words. The exchange heightened the tension, each syllable a thread in a web of anticipation, drawing them closer to the inevitable climax. As they approached the edge of the plateau, the canyon widened again, revealing the river below, glistening in the morning light. The sound of flowing water filled the silence, a counterpoint to the tension that coiled between them. The Apache could feel the final stage drawing near, the point at which questions would demand answers, choices would demand courage, and the storm within them both would seek resolution. Yet even as the distance closed, uncertainty remained. What did she truly intend? and what power did the bundle hold that had driven her across the plains and through peril? The woman shifted, the bundle pressed tightly to her chest. "If you follow," she said, "know this, the path is not what it seems." Her words carried weight, warning and promise, amplifying the suspense that had grown steadily since their first encounter. The Apache's grip tightened on his bow, heart pounding, mind racing. Every decision he made now could influence the outcome, and yet he knew he could not retreat. The pull of destiny, of curiosity, and of the unspoken connection between them compelled him forward. Cade and Leora watched from their hidden perch, recognizing the convergence of forces below. Their advantage was uncertain. The woman had shown cunning beyond expectation, and the Apache's skill made him a formidable player in this unfolding drama. The canyon seemed to hold them all in suspension, every movement a signal, every sound a potential clue. As though the land itself conspired to heighten the tension before the final storm of action erupted. The Apache took another step, closer than ever. The woman's eyes met his, intense, unwavering, full of secrets and unspoken stories. "The choice is yours," she said, her voice soft but commanding. "To step forward is to embrace what has been set in motion. To hesitate may leave you behind." The canyon seemed to echo her words, amplifying their weight, as if the land itself understood the gravity of the moment. A sudden gust of wind rattled the rocks, stirring dust and loose stones, as though the storm that had introduced her now returned to witness the final approach. The Apache braced himself, senses at their peak, aware that the moment of revelation, of confrontation, and of destiny was imminent. Every shadow, every sound, every movement carried meaning, building toward a climax that promised to test courage, resolve, and the strength of the human spirit. She moved then, stepping toward the edge of the plateau, the bundle pressed close, her gaze never leaving his. The Apache mirrored her movements, closing the distance cautiously, aware that the final confrontation was near. The canyon held its breath, the river below whispered of secrets, and the wind carried the echoes of the storm that had set them on this path.
Oh.
Every element conspired to heighten anticipation, to draw the story toward a climax where choices, courage, and revelation would collide. For a brief moment, time seemed suspended. The Apache and the woman faced each other, the weight of history, the storm, and the bundle pressing between them. The shadows on the cliffs hinted at unseen observers, the hidden forces of ambition, and the potential for chaos. The tension reached its peak. A taut line stretched across the canyon, ready to snap. As the first sunbeam struck the plateau, illuminating the woman's determined face, the Apache understood that the moment of truth was at hand. The Apache took a measured breath, feeling the weight of the canyon and the storm that had shaped their journey settle around him. The woman, still clutching the bundle, regarded him with calm eyes, the kind that carried both challenge and trust. For the first time, the tension between them softened, replaced by the unspoken understanding that the moment of reckoning had arrived, not through conflict, but through clarity. He stepped forward, closing the last of the distance, and she made no move to retreat. "You have followed far," she said, her voice steady but gentle. "You could have turned back, yet you did not. That speaks more than words ever could." The Apache nodded, his gaze falling to the bundle she had carried through storm and shadow. He could feel its significance without needing to see inside. It was not merely objects. It was history, knowledge, and responsibility bound together. "What is it?" he asked, curiosity tempered with respect. She allowed herself a small smile. "It is the proof of a promise," she said. "Legacy. Waiting to be honored, not destroyed." The wind shifted, carrying the scent of rain-soaked earth and the distant river below. The canyon seemed to exhale, as if the land itself recognized the release of tension. In the quiet that followed, the Apache finally understood the truth. This was not about pursuit or capture, but about choice. Every step he had taken, every risk he had embraced, had led to this recognition. The woman's journey, like his own, had been shaped by courage, resolve, and the willingness to step forward when others might hesitate. From the distant ridge, Cade and Leora watched, realization dawning that the story unfolding before them was not theirs to control. The cunning of the woman, the determination of the Apache, and the natural order of the canyon had outmaneuvered their schemes. Cade clenched his fists, frustrated but aware that interference now would only invite failure. Leora's eyes softened slightly, a hint of admiration for those who had faced challenge with honor and perseverance. Both retreated quietly, understanding that the resolution belonged to those who had proven themselves worthy. The woman extended the bundle toward the Apache. "It has been protected for a reason," she said, "and now it is time to share its purpose." He hesitated briefly, then took it, feeling the textures of cloth and wood, the hidden weight of history. As he opened it, he discovered documents, symbols, and letters that told stories of ancestors, of promises made and kept, of debts owed and honor preserved. It was a record of lives intertwined, of decisions that had shaped the land and its people. The significance was immediate and profound, revealing that the storm, the pursuit, and the mystery had all been orchestrated to ensure its survival. The Apache looked at her, understanding dawning. "You carried this all this way, through danger and storm, for protection?" She nodded, "And for guidance," she said. "It is not only a past to be remembered, but a future to be shaped. The choices we make now will honor it." In that moment, he realized the depth of her courage, the clarity of her purpose, and the trust she placed in him by sharing it. The storm had not been a threat. It had been a test of resolve, of vision, and of character. They descended together toward the river, the bundle held safely between them. The canyon no longer seemed foreboding, but alive with history and possibility. The sun's light reflected off the water, illuminating rocks and trees with warmth, and the Apache felt a sense of peace settle over him. The journey had tested him, revealed hidden truths, and shaped him into a figure ready to honor the legacy now entrusted to him. The woman walked beside him, a partner in both understanding and purpose, her presence no longer a source of tension, but of guidance and strength. As they reached the riverbank, the Apache carefully placed the bundle on a flat stone. Together, they examined its contents, uncovering maps, letters, and relics that spoke of forgotten alliances and promises made across generations. The realization settled in that the storm, the pursuit, and the canyon itself had all been part of a journey toward recognition, reconciliation, and preparation for what lay ahead. Every obstacle, every hidden observer, and every challenge had contributed to the clarity of this moment. The woman finally spoke, her voice carrying the calm authority of one who had borne responsibility with courage. "The bundle must be preserved, honored, and used wisely," she said. "Its story is larger than any one person. It is a guide, a warning, and a promise to those who come after." The Apache nodded, feeling the weight of understanding settle across his shoulders. He knew now that the canyon, the storm, and the pursuit had been lessons not just in skill, but in patience, perception, and character. In the distance, Cade and Leora disappeared over the ridge. Their ambitions thwarted, but their curiosity tempered by respect for those who had faced the storm and emerged with purpose. The canyon itself seemed to settle, the echoes of tension fading into memory, leaving only clarity, resolution, and the quiet hum of life returning to the land. The Apache and the woman stood together, recognizing that the journey had changed them, shaped their choices, and strengthened their resolve. The Apache finally spoke, voice steady and calm. "The plains are wide and history is long," he said. "But now we carry a responsibility to honor it, not merely survive it." She nodded, her eyes reflecting both relief and determination. "And we will," she said. "For those who came before and for those who will come after." The bundle remained between them, a symbol of trust, legacy, and the choices that had defined their journey. They began the walk back toward the settlement, the canyon's shadows stretching long behind them. Every step was deliberate, every movement marked by understanding. The Apache realized that he had not only followed her through storm and shadow, but had learned lessons that would guide him for the rest of his life about courage, perception, and the power of trust. She, in turn, had revealed that strength could be measured not only by skill but by integrity, wisdom, and willingness to share burdens with one who had proven worthy. As they reached the edge of the plains, the sun rose fully, casting golden light across the land. The storm was gone, leaving behind only the memory of challenge and the evidence of survival. The Apache and the woman paused, looking back at the canyon that had tested them and forward to the horizon that promised possibility. There was a shared understanding, silent yet profound. that the journey had not only protected a legacy, but had forged a bond rooted in respect, courage, and shared purpose. The settlement awaited them, quiet and unassuming, yet ready to receive the truths carried across storm and canyon. Children played near the river, elders tended to tasks, and the wind carried the faint scent of smoke and earth. The Apache and the woman entered together, their steps measured, carrying not only the bundle, but the weight of lessons learned and promises to uphold. The people around them sensed the change, the aura of accomplishment, the calm certainty of those who had faced danger and emerged transformed. In a quiet corner of the settlement, they set the bundle in a place of honor. The documents, letters, and relics within told stories of courage, loyalty, and choice. The Apache turned to the woman, eyes meeting hers with the unspoken acknowledgement of partnership, respect, and understanding. "We have done what was needed," he said. "Storm brought us here, but our choices shaped what comes next." She nodded, the tension of months finally released. "And what comes next will honor both the past and the future," she replied. The sun climbed higher, illuminating the plains, the canyon, and the river. Life returned to a natural rhythm, the echoes of the storm fading, but leaving lessons in their place. The Apache and the woman walked through the settlement, their presence a reminder of the power of courage, the importance of integrity, and the strength found in trust. Cade and Leora were gone, their ambitions thwarted, yet the lessons of observation and perseverance lingered in their memory. As evening approached, the Apache and the woman stood once more at the riverbank, the water reflecting their images in the golden light of the setting sun. The bundle, now part of history and legacy, rested between them, a symbol of what had been preserved and what could be carried forward. The canyon had tested them, the storm had challenged them, and the plains had witnessed their courage. Together they had honored both the past and the possibilities of the future. The Apache looked at her, eyes calm, voice steady. "The plains are wide, the history long, and the journey never truly ends," he said. She smiled, a quiet strength shining in her gaze. "But we carry what matters," she replied, "and now nothing can take it from us." The wind carried the words across the river, through the canyon, and over the plains. A quiet celebration of endurance, understanding, and shared purpose. The Apache and the woman walked back toward the settlement, side by side, the bundle secure and the storm behind them. The canyon, the river, and the plains bore witness to the journey they had undertaken. The mysteries unraveled, and the conflicts resolved through courage, patience, and trust. As night fell, the settlement glowed softly with the lights of hearth and home, a testament to resilience, legacy, and the enduring strength of those who dared to face storms, both literal and of the human spirit. And so, the Apache and the woman continued their lives, changed by the journey, bonded by shared purpose, and guided by the legacy they had preserved. The storm had passed, the canyon was at peace, and the plains stretched wide, ready to witness new stories of courage, integrity, and the power of choice. They had faced the unknown, embraced the challenge, and emerged stronger, carrying forward the lessons of the past while shaping the promise of tomorrow.